are like history in general. We evolve. Just celebrate we're not racist
also,
anymore.
if you have
and
to
just
have
be a grown-up.
If you have to have a warning, you have to have a warning about
just,
a comedy film where...
Well, it's not a comedy.
No, I'm not talking about Gone with the Wind. I'm talking about just generally. You know, have warnings on comedy films where a joke is said, which is clearly a joke, not intended to be remotely offensive to anybody.
Right.
And even that now needs a warning at the front in case anybody's offended.
Well, everybody, I hope you're having a happy holiday. As you can see, I'm here. I'm having a sip of bubbly while I record this for you on the day after Christmas. And we got a couple little boomers here. Piers Morgan on Bill Maher's show. And, you know, they're talking about how soft everybody is these days. Kind of the sort of thing I would say. So, you know, for those of you amongst my viewers who are offended by my use of the term boomer as a slur, you know, get over yourselves. You'll be fine. Yeah, so they're talking about trigger warnings, being soft, how everyone's just soft these days. And basically, I tend to agree. Not that I'm a super hard man, a tough guy or anything, but the exaltation of victimhood is the basic theme here. And I think they make some good points. So let's get into it. And they're having a drink, so have a drink while you're at it too. It's the holidays after all.
Hungry again. By the way, that movie, I gotta say, entertaining as fuck. And the people who need a disclaimer, this is the problem. You fucking babies. It's 1939.
Don't get me on
Can't
that.
you just see by the film stock that things were very different? Humans are like history in general. We evolve. Just celebrate we're not racist
Also,
anymore.
if you have
and
to
just
have
be a grown-up.
If you have to have a warning, you have to have a warning about
just,
a comedy film where...
Well, it's not a comedy.
No, I'm not talking about Gone with the Wind. I'm talking about just generally. You know, have warnings on comedy films where a joke is said, which is clearly a joke, not intended to be remotely offensive to anybody.
Right.
And even that now needs a warning at the front in case anybody's offended. What do they think is going to happen when you watch it? What happens to people?
I mean, the fact
they sit there shaking.
The fact that this generation needs a trigger warning
it's
and
pathetic.
a Klonopin
It's
to
pathetic.
get through an episode of
Bill,
Friends.
it's pathetic. It's pathetic. We've become a world, and I've talked about this a lot, a world where it is now a premium to be a victim. It is celebrated to be weak. You see that great sporting athletes are now making more money and becoming more acclaimed if they quit than if they win. We're becoming essentially...
if you're talking about the one who got the twisties, that's not right.
Well, I'm actually...
Is that who you're talking about?
Well,
I can't remember her name, but...
I'm actually not talking about... I was actually talking about the...
She did not quit.
Well,
they drove this... Olympics, that sickness of taking someone as a child and training them like, I mean, you just with no humanity, really. It's just you are this vessel for America winning a medal. And they drove that poor girl to
Simone Biles you're talking about.
Simone Biles,
Yeah.
okay. So I have no doubt that she maxed out to what she was possibly as a human capable of taking. She didn't give up.
I wasn't actually talking about her on this.
Oh.
I was actually
Who's quitter? Who are you talking about as a quitter?
I was actually talking about Naomi Osaka, the tennis player.
Okay, I know less about that. Naomi Osaka, I know that name.
It's an interesting thing for me where she just quit. She quit in the middle of a tournament.
Okay,
and
why?
She quit. She came up with a lot of reasons why. It was all, you know, her mental health and this, that, and the other. She then managed to make a miraculous recovery to do the Olympic flame at the Olympics about 2 months later. And I watched all this go down.
Just carrying the flame?
Yeah, but
well, that doesn't take guts.
No, but my point is,
if she quit because she couldn't play a match, that's more than just carrying a flame.
But I don't really agree with you about that. And I'm not sure I completely agree about Simone Biles because she managed to recover 5 days later and take part in an individual competition, having let her teammates compete without her and lose to the Russians. So I don't entirely agree. But my general point about it is this. I think that in both cases, and many others at the moment, there is a weird cultural phenomenon going on where it's almost frowned upon to want to be a winner. Where if you express yourself...
Then you're an oppressor.
Yes.
Of course he's an oppressor, everybody. These are two old white men sitting down having some whiskey and talking shit about the younger generations. And yeah, I don't know why they're getting off on this tangent about sports stars like Simone Biles or Naomi Osaka. You know, I don't know enough about that to comment on it, you know, at this high level. But yeah, when you're at that kind of high level, you're just expected to perform no matter what. But that's sort of a secondary consideration as far as I'm concerned. It's more like this overall victim mentality, this overall softness that I think they're really on about, and which, yeah, I agree with. But, you know, maybe younger people would say, of course you agree with that. You're just an old white guy, you know. Carl, you're a boomer yourself. Well, I'm almost a boomer. Same age as Piers Morgan, born in 65. Not quite a boomer. Gen X, thank you very much. But I think it's more of a mindset rather than an actual age thing. But, yeah, this idea of having trigger warnings at the start of old films, for example, Gone with the Wind, as they mentioned. Yeah, I mean, Gone with the Wind depicts a time when certain social norms prevailed. You know, even when it came out, it was, you know, it came out in 1930s, 38, something like that. And it was depicting the Civil War period, or the period before the Civil War and into the Civil War. So it was already depicting a time much before the time it was released. So, I mean, obviously, or if you see things, I even see things like in books for learning Latin, for example. I'm very interested in learning Latin. I've kind of tried to learn it off and on over the years. And if you look at modern books for learning Latin, they'll say things like, oh, you know, our main character, Julius, keeps going on about the slaves he owns, but having slaves is bad, people. You do know it's bad, very bad. Slavery is very a bad thing, you know, and they go on and on about how slavery is bad, instead of just saying, well, this is just the way it was back then, because that is the way it was. Slavery was endemic in the ancient world, and it's still around today. Although not in the Western world, but in Africa, for example, there's plenty of places where slaves are kept, or in the Gulf states. There are countries where there are people who are in effect slaves, more like indentured servants, like they're never going to get out of their slavery. That sort of thing. It happens. So anyway, let's let these old white guys continue ranting for a bit.
Yeah, in some way, if you
right.
if you want to dominate your sport and be a champion and a winner and do what it takes to
Well,
win, well, let me finish.
We still love winners. Come on, we just had the Super Bowl.
We do.
We
we
like
do.
the winners. They go to Disneyland. The other losers get to weep in the locker.
That's true.
Okay.
But but if you now quit, if you now give up, and you just embrace this new phenomenon of, well, I've got mental health issues, whatever the real reason may be, and I'm not doubting sometimes the veracity of that, but you get celebrated more than if you win. And I have a problem with that.
Well,
I think it all plays to this, and then everybody wants to be a victim after.
Right, no, it is
Everyone
definitely-
then says,
yeah.
I have a little sniffle, and they go on social media, I want you to feel sorry for me, and I want to be celebrated for my little sniffle,
Yes.
which means I can't now do my job. And if, by the way, if you make me do my job, you're an oppressor who is forcing me to do something against my will. And so this thing starts to spew out.
Right,
And
and that's not to-
eventually weakness becomes celebrated more than strength.
Right, which is not to say that there aren't real oppressors in this
Not
world.
at all. Or that there are real people
right.
suffering from
But
serious
you're-
mental problems.
Right, but you are correct. It is a...
Yes, this idea of celebrating weakness as a strength, that I think, well, that is actually a good point, in that it points to a more pervasive underlying problem in Western society in general, in that, you know, weaknesses, weak people, you know, or you say somebody like me, you know, you know, my teeth are not that good. They've been corrected. My eyesight is bad. You know, in an older world where people were living more closer to nature, you know, would somebody like me have been, you know, removed from the gene pool eventually? You know, I wouldn't have been able to survive. You know, a lot of people like that. Yeah, I've got a good brain, you know, and so maybe I could have made myself useful some other way, but I wouldn't have been a good hunter, for example, because I can't see properly. So things like that. So because we can save more and more people who in an much older time would not have lived long, you know, to put it a bit bluntly, in effect, that in the long term, that has a weakening effect on all of us, on society in general. And weak people, as the memes say, weak people, of course, want to band together to protect themselves against strong people and bring strong people down so they can't, fall prey to the tyranny of strong people. It's an interesting concept.
Victim culture. It is exalted.
And there's something pathetic about it.
It's very pathetic. Well, it's the end of the empire.
I'm told that I can't. For example, you talked about a stiff upper lip earlier with the British.
Yes.
I've always prided myself on having a stiff upper lip. I think it's a thing to actually to want to aspire to have.
And what about your penis? What about how much pride
We'll
you have?
come to my stiff lower lip a bit later, but
we come to our part of the podcast.
There's a tequila kicking in, Bill.
Some people find it awkward, but I feel is generic to what we're talking about.
I'm extremely relaxed if you want to talk about my lower genitalia, but I'd rather get back, if you don't mind, in the short term.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
No, I just think that we are entering a perilous period of society where weakness is celebrated, and the stiff upper lip, which used to be something the Brits were admired for around the world.
Synonymous with.
Right. And we were like, that's a good thing. In times of trouble, the British ability to rise above this, not get over emotional, not get too down about it, dust yourself down and kick on. That's gone now. Now the stiff upper lip is now to be condemned. I am to be condemned for saluting a stiff upper lip. How dare I be resilient?
But see, this is not to...
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, that is a good point, especially at a societal level. If you start celebrating weakness and degeneracy and start promoting that as the baseline of your society, then your society is going to have problems. It is going to degenerate further, and it will be taken over by other peoples who do not have these weaknesses built in. And these weaknesses can not just be physical, but also emotional. So if you are mental, I guess I should say, if you haven't got the mental fortitude to protect your own society, in other words, to be intolerant of those who don't belong there, then you eventually will be taken over by people who have a stronger will, and they have the will to take you over, the will to conquer you. That will happen. There's one quote. Who's it by? Probably by some naughty person. It basically goes something like, every exhausted civilization awaits its barbarian. It might be by Julius Evola, somebody like that. But I think it's true, and I think the American empire is on the decline. The West is on the decline in many ways. It's not irreversible. Plenty can be done to reverse it if the will is there. But if our civilization is exhausted, the barbarians and our weakest people are letting the barbarians in through the gates, then we'll be taken over. That's just the way it is. See Douglas Murray for his books about this and on this theme. So, with that happy thought, I will leave you guys there. I'm going to have another sip of my bubbly. And I hope you're enjoying your holiday season. I'll be making more videos for you, so make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. As always, I read all the comments and I reply to quite a few. I really appreciate it. It helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.